All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're decoding a biological mystery that has honestly frustrated pretty much all of us at some point. We are looking straight at the science behind why abdominal fat is just so incredibly stubborn. Like, why does it seem to play by a completely different set of rules than the rest of your body? Well, we've got some fascinating biology to unpack today, and I promise you, it's going to completely change how you view your metabolism. So let's get into it. It's a super relatable and frankly, absolutely infuriating situation, isn't it? You know the drill. You put in the hard work, you clean up your diet, and almost immediately you see it in your face. Your face slims down, your arms start looking leaner, you feel lighter. But then you look in the mirror and that stubborn belly fat is just sitting right there, literally mocking your progress. It feels incredibly unfair when your early diet progress completely bypasses your midsection. But as we're going to see, your body isn't actually betraying you here.
See, the reason is that belly fat isn't just some passive storage unit for excess calories. Not at all. It's actually an evolutionary survival organ. It's this metabolically complex tissue that's deeply tied to your hormones. Your body actually hoards this abdominal fat as a vital built-in defense mechanism. It was literally designed by evolution, and its main job is to protect your internal organs during times of perceived starvation. So basically, before your abs even think about showing, your body wants to guarantee it's not facing a famine.
So to actually outsmart this ancient survival mechanism, we need to map out the biological timeline of what happens when you cut calories, because it really is a journey of adaptation. We go from this initial biological panic in the first few days, right into that incredibly frustrating plateau around weeks 1 and 2, all the way to the ultimate fat-burning breakthrough, which usually hits between weeks 3 and 6. Understanding this exact timeline, that is the absolute secret to not throwing in the towel too early. Okay, let's start with those first few days. When you suddenly cut your calories, it's kind of like pulling the rug out from under your metabolism. Your brain detects this sudden energy shortage and, well, it essentially panics. Since it's no longer getting that steady flow of energy from your usual meals, it signals your liver to rely entirely on something called glycogen. Just think of glycogen as your body's backup battery. It's basically stored sugar, all primed and ready to power your muscles and your brain when fresh food isn't coming in. Now, here is the biological twist that fools absolutely everybody. Notice the specific ratio at play here. For every 1 single gram of glycogen your body burns for fuel, it drops 3 grams of stored water weight. 3 to 1. So, when those glycogen levels drop during the first few days of a diet, the water weight just plummets right alongside it. The scale starts moving incredibly fast, and you're probably thinking you're a total dieting genius. But it's an illusion. I hate to break it to you, but it is not actual fat loss yet. Now, don't get me wrong, that early drop on the scale feels totally magical. Your clothes fit better and you instantly feel lighter. But here is the absolute most crucial takeaway you need to remember. The early drop on the scale isn't a victory. It's simply an invitation to keep going. If you mistake that initial water weight flush for actual fat loss, you are setting yourself up for some major frustration down the line. Sure, 2 to 4 kilos might just vanish, but that's just your body adjusting to fewer carbs and less stored water. You absolutely must push through this initial phase if you want to reach the real fat-burning stage. Because right after that magical honeymoon phase of the first week, you hit weeks 1 and 2, and boom, the scale just stops moving. This is the dreaded plateau. It's the exact moment where most people just throw their hands up and quit, figuring, well, the diet stopped working. But we really need to reframe this. Hitting this plateau is actually a huge victory. It means your body has finally sensed a pattern of lowered energy intake and triggered what we call metabolic adaptation. Your metabolism slows down just a tiny bit, and your hunger hormones rise. Your body is successfully recalibrating to a new normal. It is not failing you. During this whole recalibration process, your hormones are working furiously behind the scenes. Think of them as the invisible conductors of your body's energy orchestra. For your body to actually feel safe enough to unlock its fat stores, these hormones have to perform this perfectly synchronized biochemical dance. First, you've got insulin. That's your energy vault. It literally has to drop for fat to be released. Then there's cortisol, the stress hormone. If that spikes because you're not sleeping or you're super anxious, it actively causes belly fat storage. And finally, leptin, your satiety signal, has to stay stable so you don't overeat. Every single one of them has to move in perfect sync. Understanding those hormones really explains why belly fat is so incredibly stubborn. Because as it turns out, not all fat is created equal. Your body has this deep, highly metabolically active fat called visceral fat. It wraps right around your internal organs. This stuff is actually dangerous. It's linked to inflammation and heart disease. But because it's so metabolically active, your body actually targets it first. Now, the fat you can actually see and pinch, that subcutaneous fat on your lower belly, Biologically speaking, it's relatively harmless. So your body prioritizes burning through the unseen, dangerous visceral fat way before it ever even touches that visible subcutaneous layer you're trying to get rid of. So once your body finally clears out that dangerous visceral fat and starts to feel safe again, you hit a massive turning point. We call it metabolic flexibility. And honestly, it's a beautiful biological process. After a few consistent days of being in a calorie deficit, your glycogen stores are totally depleted, your insulin levels are safely lowered, and your liver starts converting stored fat into ketones, which are this highly efficient, super clean energy source. Your body just seamlessly shifts gears from burning glucose to burning fat. At this point, you're no longer just pretending to burn fat, your body is actually doing the real work.
But getting to that point, it requires this really powerful synergy across three main pillars. You can't just rely on one. Your diet dictates the energy scarcity, which is what lowers your insulin. Then exercise, especially strength training, builds the muscle you need to raise your resting metabolic rate, meaning you're burning calories even when you're just sitting on the couch. But you really have to pay attention to the lifestyle piece. If you're working out constantly but skimping on sleep and living under chronic stress, your cortisol is going to stay incredibly high. And remember what we said about cortisol? High cortisol locks belly fat onto your body like a literal suit of armor.
And here's the kicker. Even when everything is aligned perfectly, the actual physical biology of your midsection has its own built-in defense system. Your abdominal region literally has a lower density of blood vessels and fewer of what are called beta-adrenergic receptors. Now, those are the specific receptors responsible for triggering fat release. So in the simplest biological terms, it is genuinely physically harder for your body to mobilize energy from your belly compared to, say, your face or your arms. It's essentially your body's ultimate reserve tank for a worst-case scenario.
So the really crucial point here is, how do we signal to the body that it's actually safe to tap into that stubborn reserve? The answer is a moderate calorie deficit of exactly 15 to 20% below your maintenance level. Slogans like "just eat less and move more" are way too simplistic, and frankly, they can be dangerous. Because if you cut your calories too aggressively, like way below that 20% mark, your body interprets that as active starvation. It shuts down your thyroid function, spikes that cortisol we talked about, and creates this brutal rebound effect where you end up storing fat even faster than before. It's called fat overshooting, and it is just not worth the risk.
Now, when you do hit that sweet spot, that perfect 15 to 20% deficit, you're not going to just wake up one morning feeling the fat melting off. It doesn't work like that. Instead, you'll start to notice what I like to call the biological whispers of fat burning. You really have to look out for these subtle signs. Your energy is going to stabilize throughout the entire day. Your sugar cravings will drop significantly. Your clothes are going to start fitting differently, and your waistline tightens up, even if the scale absolutely refuses to budge. And maybe most importantly, you'll have increased endurance between meals without crashing. All of these things prove that your body is confidently running on fat fuel. Which brings us to the million-dollar question, right? The timeline truth you've all been waiting for. For the average, consistent person who has balanced their macros and managed their stress levels, the real noticeable magic of midsection fat loss only really compounds after the 3rd to 6th week of adaptation. Honestly, for some folks with higher insulin resistance, it might even take 8 to 12 weeks. But generally, that window between week 3 and week 6 is when your glycogen is low, your hormones are finally stable, and your metabolism truly settles into its new, highly efficient fat-burning rhythm. But listen, getting to that 3rd, 4th, or 5th week requires you to treat your new habits as a sustainable lifestyle, not just some temporary quick fix. Reaching fat-burning mode? That's an achievement. But maintaining it? That is mastery. The absolute biggest mistake people make is relaxing all their good habits the very second they see a little bit of progress. Don't do that. If you can maintain just 80% of your consistency, your body will maintain 100% of its progress. You have to build this continuous, supportive environment for your metabolism every single day. So we find ourselves right back where we started. But now we're armed with a really deep biological understanding of what's going on. Look, your belly fat wasn't built overnight, and it absolutely will not vanish overnight. The first few weeks of any diet are going to test your discipline, sure, but the following months, those test your identity. Science tells us exactly when the real fat burning begins. It happens right past that frustrating week 2 plateau. So the question is, now that you know the metabolic magic is just waiting for you in week 3 and beyond, will you still be there when it does? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer today, and I really hope this empowers you to stay incredibly consistent out there.